Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wisdom from the Field. I'm here today, the special guest, Rabbi Yosef Romano, founder of Chabad Suite, Chabad Concierge. Welcome, Rabbi Yosef.
Thank you, Tzviki. It's an honor to have a conversation with you on your special platform over here, and looking forward to what comes out of it.
Yeah, thank you. My pleasure and beautiful. So tell us a little bit about, what are these services? I know one is software stuff and the other is about delegation and virtual assistant. So paint a picture for us about, is there any relationship between the two? What are they?
Okay, so as you're mentioning, I am the founder of Chabad Suite and Chabad Concierge. Chabad Suite is a software platform to manage your Chabad house that we created. I think I'm in my 11th year, 10 years ago, 10 years plus ago. And I also facilitate delegating for shluchim. I help shluchim delegate to virtual assistants overseas. And this we've been doing for around 4 years, a little over 4 years. Maybe before I kind of, elaborate on that, maybe I could ask you quickly, you invited me to the podcast and I appreciate that, but just so I know which part of me to bring to the table, what interested you in inviting me, or what piqued your curiosity that you asked me to join?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So honestly, it's more about the delegating piece, because I know that's something that, starting from growing up in shluchis and seeing my parents and the shluchis, but also from speaking to shluchim, is that that's one of the challenges. There's so many different roles that a shliach carries and has to fill, and being able to successfully hand off the things that you can, so you could do the things that only you could do, right? I know that's one of the big challenges. So I'm really fascinated about the topic, and I'd love to hear, you're in the trenches of that work, what you've seen, the obstacles are, the challenges are, what you've learned that the solutions are, and if anyone listening to this could learn some insights on like how they can delegate better and lead their moisad better, I think that would be a tremendous win. So that's my agenda.
Got it. Yeah. So happy to jump in there. So there's a lot. This is a big topic, and I think one of the main insights is that it's a big topic. The instinct is that it's not, right? It's just hire someone, you pay them, and they should just do the work you want. It instinctively feels very obvious and very straightforward. And it's anything but. And the truth is, if you speak to any entrepreneur of any type, and you ask them what's the hardest part, it's always HR, human resources, hiring, dealing with people. Once you introduce people, the complexity of your operation, endeavors, whatever you're doing, balloons. It grows exponentially. It's much more difficult. And it's funny because for me, it was a big transition going from focusing on software, where it's all ones and zeros, it's on and off. It's the systems are very reliable to the degree that you set them up. Whereas with humans, it's much more complicated, and it's a very different sugya altogether. I think that's the introduction I would give to the topic of delegating.
Can I ask a specific question?
Please.
As like to get in there, how did you go from working with like the systems, the software systems, to like this whole other realm of people?
It's a very good question. I was very excited about software. For the moment I landed in my first year of shluchis and I saw the administrative chaos that exists in Chabad houses. I really wanted to solve it, and I thought software would be the obvious way to do so. I didn't really have a background in software, but I guess I do tend to think in systems and structure, and so it was just an obvious thing. Being that I was in Silicon Valley in Berkeley, California, there's a lot of developers around, and I was trying different things. And there was one gentleman who had come to the Chabad house, started coming regularly, who was a developer, kind of took me under his wing. We built out the system, the software. I loved it. Now, what happened was, as we were growing the software, we're getting more users, and I'm seeing how shluchim utilize the CRM. I was very bothered by the fact that there's a lot that's not being utilized. And I didn't understand why. And one idea that came to mind is that after a while is that it's just a capacity thing. They don't have time. Shluchim don't have time to start tracking their interactions with the Baal Batim and entering interactions, scheduling things for the future. They're stretched thin. They don't have the time. That was something that I took awareness of. Now, at the same time, come around 2019, 2020, COVID, I'm looking for a tech support agent for Chabad Suite, and I'm trying to hire. And I can't find anybody in the United States who wants to work at that point because it's more lucrative not to work, getting the handouts from the government than it is to work. So I had friends in Los Angeles at the time that told me about hiring overseas. So I went ahead and I started hiring, trying different people in the Philippines specifically. And while I did not have any atzlacha filling the tech support role, I did notice that they were very helpful with admin work. So all my billing stuff, client communications, and things like that, where I was able to delegate quite successfully. So that gave me an idea that obviously the next move over here is to help shluchim get into this field and to start delegating with virtual assistants. So I spent a lot of time in figuring out how to package it, what other concierge shluchim have, and hiring those out and making sure that this is a safe and reliable thing to bring shluchim into. And Baruch Hashem, we launched and it was well received. And I think right now at this point it's pretty much a norm for every shliach to have a virtual assistant, whether they do it through us or some other way. It's a norm, which is great. The opportunity I had in that journey is seeing all the successes, but also all the failures, and it launched me into a 4-year exploration, trying to understand what are the components that allow delegating to thrive. And it's anything but obvious. And there were so many confusing things that I would see where you'd have one shliach working with a virtual assistant, raving about the virtual assistant, and then another shliach with the same virtual assistant complaining bitterly that the virtual assistant is terrible. Ultimately, what it came down to is there's the shliach, there's the VA, and then there's what's being delegated. And those things have to align. And each one of those three things have a whole world unto themselves. So that's why actually right now we've paused taking on any new clients for Chabad Concierge until after Pesach. We're not taking on new clients because I'm shifting things in our infrastructure internally to accommodate all the different pieces to make sure that it's going to be a smooth experience for everybody that comes in. But more recently, obviously over the years, things got much more smooth and the experiences got much better. And thank God we're in a good place with bringing shluchim on into the world of delegating and onboarding them. And it's an exciting experience, and learned a lot from it.
Wow. So what would you say are the top 3 obstacles for a shliach that, say you hired a virtual assistant, the virtual assistant is capable of doing admin or a specific kind of work. So what gets in the way of the effective and successful, transition of that work over to the VA?
I would say at the foundation of it, the most fundamental element is, where's the shliach's mindset at? If the shliach's coming into it from a place of, I don't want to deal with this, I want somebody else to deal with it. I want to hand it off to someone because I'm not interested. That's not delegating. That doesn't work. That never works. it's always the leader's responsibility. Even when it's delegated, it's on your shoulders, and it's not a magic solution. It's your responsibility to make sure that you identify what you want delegated, how you want it to be done, and what success looks like, to make sure that you've communicated that successfully to the employee, to the staff, and to be present and to expect that you are going to have to correct course and to adjust and to hold them accountable. All these factors are in place. Realistically, when you start delegating, you're really entering a new business, if you want. It's
Hmm.
it's a whole new role.
Saying the shliach is
And it's
entering
not
a new role.
absolutely,
Hmm.
absolutely. It's you're starting to go in a different direction, and that's something everybody has to face. Meaning, there's very few people that are the performers of the work, and then get to build an infrastructure for scale around them, continuing to be the performers of work. Right? Meaning, any business you go into, any organization you start, you're the one actively doing the work. Eventually, you max out your cap. Now, you need to go build the infrastructure that's going to support multiplying you. And then you
Right.
have to get the people that are going to do what you've been doing until now. And it's a different work. At that point, you're lifting up your role to oversee the infrastructure that is now multiplying the impact that you're having. And it's a hard transition from a personal experience. I like what I'm doing, and it's so hard for me to now step back and have to oversee other people do it who are not doing it as good as me, perhaps.
Hmm.
It's a transition. It's an internal
Interesting.
transition,
Is that
but
like
also
an
it's new
emotional,
work. Absolutely. Yeah,
like an
absolutely.
emotional fear or attachment to?
Well, emotions can definitely play a role, and get into it. And there's also just a preference. I mean, it's a change in identity. It really is a change in identity. You go from being the performer of the activity to the overseer of activity, or the facilitator of the activity. Now, unless you're like Avram Fried, or a musical star, or Lehavdil Tony Robbins or something, right? Like you're the artist, and you're building the infrastructure around you. In those cases, it works, but it's hard to do when you're not coming in with that level of stardom. You have to, if you don't have that level of stardom, you have to be the CEO. You have to run the operation. You're going to have to develop the skills, both hard skills and soft skills, to build the infrastructure, to oversee it, and to make sure it runs according to your direction.
Hmm.
And so, again, this is just the foundation. It's just making that shift, knowing that you're going to that direction. And most people don't want to. And I don't blame them. Why would you want to? You want to work with the shamans. You want to work with people. You want the relationships. That's the fundamental
Hmm.
there, I think.
Interesting.
I could continue a little bit. Okay, so this is where the shliach starts off, right? It's just where's your identity? Are you still trying to do everything and just have somebody take care of the other stuff that you don't want to deal with? That doesn't work. Or are you ready to take on the identity of a delegator? And that's already
Okay.
just the first level, right? Now, what are
Can,
you delegating?
can
Also
can
very
I ask you
important.
something on that before I go on?
Please, go ahead.
So, what is like meaning? Because you're saying the resistance to wanting to shift identity, but my question is that seemingly, if someone does delegate successfully, right, there's more availability for them to be doing the unique things that they can do. If I'm successfully delegating administrative work, then I would be more open to like you said, connecting with neshamas and teaching Torah, etc. So what really is that the resistance to, like you said, shifting roles in doing everything yourself to facilitating other people doing those things?
Right. It's a very good question, very pointed, because I guess the short answer is that you have to take a step back to take two steps forward. In the sense, I'm on shluchas for 3-4 years, imagine, right? And I'm starting to get momentum, and I have relationships, and I just want to plow forward. I want to move. I have this forward momentum that I want to keep up. But what happens is, once you start delegating, you have to pause, because you're learning a new skill. You're learning to delegate,
Hmm.
and everything that you were doing until now that you're trying to delegate lived in your head. Maybe you shared it with your rebbitzin, but already you guys are speaking such a similar language. You're not explaining anything. You guys live in the same thought
Right.
space. But now you're trying to delegate someone else. So it's a real symptom, and it's really
Right. Interesting.
uncomfortable. You're pausing your momentum. You're taking the time to learn a new skill. You're taking the time to nurture this new person, and it might not work out with the first one. You might have to do it a second
Hmm.
time, and then you get 6 months in, and you switch off. So now you have to learn. Okay, how do I do it in a way that's sustainable? How do which is pretty much what Chabad Concierge helps with, is to mitigate the cost of onboarding and sustaining an employee. That's what we come in to assist with. But ultimately, that's the responsibility. You're taking all this new responsibility, you're developing new skills, and that pauses the forward momentum. But
Hmm.
once you have it in place, then of course, then it's a
Right.
luxury.
Right.
Now you can move forward and really spend time on things that are important, and start also noticing things that you didn't have the capacity or luxury to notice before, and really fine tune your craft.
Wow. Great answer. Because like you said, in the long run, this is what I'm hearing you saying. In the long run, yes, it will free you up to do those things that only you could do. But in the short term, there is a phase of you need to slow down. Like you said, articulate and systemize what are those things that you've just been doing all yourself, which like is a step back for a moment from just continuing to grow or whatever. So yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you. So
I could move
okay, so
forward with
yeah, yeah, go ahead.
what are you delegating? Should we speak about
Right.
that?
So what? Yeah, sure.
Okay, so that the first level is on the person himself. Where is he holding? Understanding what it takes to transform into a delegator. But the next step is, what are you delegating? And that's also where I see a lot of friction surface. Not everything you delegate lives in the same space, and you could delegate. The way I break it down is, you could delegate a task, you could delegate a responsibility, or you could delegate ownership. And they
Hmm.
live in completely different spheres, and they belong to different people. And you have to align the person you're delegating to with what you're delegating. If you're
Hmm.
delegating to a virtual assistant, you really want to delegate tasks, especially if it's fractional. If you have a full-time person and they're good, and you have some skill in management, or they're being managed by a third party that's reliable, like Chabad Concierge, then you can maybe start delegating responsibilities to your virtual assistant. But delegating ownership, then you need to hire someone that has that capacity. That's capacity for ownership. And I'm not saying don't do it to a virtual assistant because they're overseas. That's not true. Is the person who's applying for a virtual assistant position is not looking to take on ownership of anything. They are looking
Hmm.
to be an assistant. So be very conscious of what you're delegating. If you're expecting, and this is something that I've heard at times, where people said, I want my virtual assistant to tell me who to call and who I should follow up with, so on and so forth. Now, it's very possible to do if you set up the structure and the VA is just operating it. But if you want the VA to do the research and understand fundraising and be able to guide you and direct your fundraising efforts, it's misaligned. It's misaligned. They don't have the
Hmm.
capacity for that. That's not their role, and it's not going to work.
Is that an
So,
example of ownership? What you're saying, where like they're taking
per,
leadership on a certain
correct, correct. They're
sphere of
they're the
your.
one directing. They're the one owning and directing the direction of fundraising. That's not fit for somebody who's applying for an assistant position. That's fit for
Right.
someone who's applying for director of fundraising, or something of the sort.
What? Yeah, I'm curious. What would be the title that, like, official title in an organization or company of someone who's not just an assistant or employee that does tasks, but or even responsibility, to someone that's really has an ownership role where they're leading a certain element of the organization or company.
So in a company, the traditional terms are, you're going to have a leadership team or the C-suite. You might have a vice president, things like that, management, and then there's the frontline employees. The frontline employees are the ones that are doing the tasks, doing the activities that the business is designed to do. The managers are there to enforce compliance, and then the leadership team is there to design, to design the path and the direction of the organization. By the way, this is another thing as well to consider, is if you're hiring someone on a leadership capacity and you're trying to delegate tasks, that also won't work. Meaning it could work
Right.
a little bit, but it's gonna
It's a mismatch.
erode. It's a mismatch. It's gonna erode the
Right.
relationship. And somebody who's truly on a leader capacity, wants to take on leadership responsibilities, won't stick around to perform the tasks on behalf of somebody else. Which is another interesting thing I come across a lot. The concept of a COO.
Okay.
Shliach telling me, I want to hire a COO. I want a COO. And it's, how do I put this? A person is not ready for a COO until he already has leaders operating different um, different departments. And usually when I hear I want a COO, the way I translate it, and I've been accurate so far, it usually means that I don't want to take care of my organizational responsibilities anymore. I want somebody else to deal with it because I just want to do shluchas.
Hmm.
That's usually what I translated to.
Right.
So far,
But,
it's on point.
what is the role of the CEO in let's say in a Chabad? What would it be? It would be to run, like what would the role be if it was done right?
So I think, again, in traditional Chabad houses are too small to warrant a COO level person.
Okay.
Um,
Let's say if it
but let's call it,
a large enough moisad, right? A moisad which is has enough going on to warrant it. What would it be, ideally?
so the COO's role is to make sure that the different departments are operating together and in the direction of the vision of the company. That's the
Okay.
COO's role. At a lower level, for an organization, a small organization, it might be an operations manager, perhaps, or integrator is a term that's used, borrowed from US. And it's a similar idea, but they might have more of a handle on the operations as well. So it's not just overseeing leaders, but they also might uh, partake in some of the responsibilities of operating the day to day.
Right. Right. Interesting. Okay. So you're saying for, let's say, an average moisad, a CEO isn't the right role, but like, what are the kind of roles that would warrant ownership and not just delegating tasks, but giving someone over a whole, is that possible to
So
have someone to?
I'll try to map it out. Let me try to map it
Okay.
out, right? The way I imagine, the way I conceive it, and I've mapped it out as far as the growth trajectory, the arc of growth of the shliach is that shliach starts out as a pioneer. It's himself, him and his rebbetzin, his family. They're doing, they do everything. The mode of operation is they execute everything. The next stage is of growing from being a pioneer to an operator. And at that point, you've kind of developed a momentum with the community. They respond to you. You provide a service. They donate. They pay for their events, and you have an operation. So once you try to become an operation, that's where you could start delegating. But you want to start delegating with tasks because those are the things you understand well, and it's the easiest form of delegating. So you can
Hmm.
start delegating tasks, and you want to start with a virtual assistant or maybe someone local, doesn't really matter, but you want to gain that experience in being able to delegate tasks, understanding how to communicate it, to oversee it, to manage the person, get that experience. Once you have that underway, you could consider hiring a project manager. And project manager or somebody to carry responsibility, that's someone who can own it. In fact, sometimes it's easier, like when you're hiring a teacher, for example, or you're hiring a camp counselors or a camp director. Sometimes it's easier because you're hiring someone that's already in that role and they already know how to do it. So it's easier to delegate those kinds of things. Um, but that's kind of the second step. In the Chabad house, if you want somebody in your Chabad house managing things, that would be like a second level of delegating. Is understanding how to delegate to a project manager. What that means is that you have to be able to understand, to communicate your vision in terms of goals, in terms of projects, in terms of how you want the project accomplished, while already intuiting all the components that are going to play into this project, right? Because things will come up, like you didn't plan this thing, or the budget's not quite right, or maybe you didn't even think about mentioning budget. So you have to have already some experience to be able to delegate a project and know that you've covered all the bases to hand this off to somebody else. And then the second level, or the second point of growth, is going from being an operator to an institutional leader. And that's how I can see that, right? And that's kind of where I'm spending more of my time now, and going that direction. And that's where you transition from being the one to direct the operation of the Chabad house to the one who empowers others to operate the vision, the mission. So the goal of an institutional leader is that he facilitates other leaders to take on the responsibilities of the mission, of the vision. And that's already at a much higher level. I want to just interject this idea, because I think it's very important statistic. I did some research once just to see what the statistics are, and I found a really cool website. I forgot what it was. That has a lot of statistics around nonprofits, and I was looking to see what percentage of nonprofits have more than 5 employees, more than 20 employees, and you'd be very surprised how little it is. Very few compared to the mass of the mass amount of nonprofits that exist in the United States. There's a very small percentage that have a lot of employees. I think it was like 4% or 5%, something like that. And of those, you have schools, hospitals, things like that. So to have an outreach organization with a strong body of a strong team is quite rare. It's quite uncommon. And it's a very high level of performing. So I think it's worth mentioning, it's not meant to be easy. Not many people are doing it because it's quite difficult to get there.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. But I would love to, to zoom in a little bit on the first, stage of growth. I guess we started talking about it, but to go from the pioneer, like you called it, where you're doing everything, to, what was the term you used? Was it operator? Right. So where now I am bringing other people, right? This is like the first step of delegating. Is that what it is? Like bring other people to do, take responsibility, or do some of the administrative, or even where would you say is like program director? Where does that fall under? Is that the first state? First, is that operator?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing is, what's traditionally done is it's all mixed up. There's pioneers hiring leaders, which might not work out.
Right.
But I think the reliable and straightforward way to do it is to first delegate to a virtual assistant, which you could do even already as a pioneer, even in the early stages of running a Chabad house. It's not too hard, and it's easy to access a virtual assistant, and it's cheap enough, it's affordable enough, I would say, that you could make mistakes, you could learn, fail, try again, and it's not going to break the bank. And I think it's worth it if the person intends to grow to that direction, to start early. Don't wait till you're overwhelmed with tasks to start delegating to a virtual assistant. Start early just to learn. You'll learn a lot. So I think that's a good time to start. In terms of delegating responsibility, if you want to do it well in a way that you're going to be satisfied with the result, and there's going to be minimal friction in the experiences, you want to have enough experience that you're able to foresee how the whole progression of the project, or of the role. Meaning, if you're starting a preschool or a CT or something like that, and you have no idea how it's run, and you don't know, and you want somebody to run it under you. And I'm not talking about a leader. I'm talking about maybe like a local project manager who's going to work with you for a year or two, for example. You should really know what you're doing, or what you're expecting, or how it's done before you hand it off, unless the person you bring in is already of a leadership capacity, or has the ambition to grow there and will be able to take it up and develop it on its own.
Right. So again, to zoom in into this stage where you're starting to delegate, like, what are the key components to doing that well? What are all the ingredients that would make that process of handing over the things you want to hand over on this level? What are the ingredients to make that successful?
On the level of project manager
On the level
specifically?
of going from pioneer to operator, where you're handing over. It's not the third level. It's the second one, right? Where you're handing over. You're starting that process, handing over the tasks or responsibilities that you want to free up from your own hands to
Right.
the right people.
So in a very short way to say is know what you're trying to delegate. If you don't know how to do it yourself, you're not delegating. You're hiring someone to
Okay.
help you think.
Okay.
The person you're going to hire is going to help you discover. It's a research and development project at that point. You're discovering how to, if it's trying to delegate CRM that you never used, you're discovering how to use the CRM. And now you hired someone to help you discover that. You're not delegating. If
Right.
the thought is the person's going to take it over and do it for you, it's wrong. If you don't know how to do it, you're not delegating. You're just hiring someone who's going to help you process that.
And why
So
is that so?
step one,
Because you need to be able to oversee and direct the person that's doing the tasks.
well, because you don't even know what you want.
Right.
You're not sure how to describe what you want,
Right.
um, or teach the person what you want. Maybe you know conceptually what you want, but to bring conceptual into operational, that's not done with an assistant. That's not done with a project manager even. And you could do it, and I would actually recommend highly hire a consultant. When you have ideas of things you want to do, the shortest path to getting it done is just hire a consultant. It's cheap.
Right.
Like people say the price is too expensive. No, it's absolutely cheap. It's absolutely cheap. You're going to save so much headache, even if the consultant gets it somewhat wrong, right? It takes a lot of skill to be able to really understand the whole scope of what you're trying to do when you're speaking from a place of your personal ideation and turn that into a concrete plan. But even if he gets it wrong, you'll learn so much
Right.
just communicating with him, learning the language. It's worth it. Pay a consultant to
Interesting.
figure it out. Don't delegate until you know what you want.
Huh.
And now, even when let's say you did pay the consultant, right? And designed the operational plan for you and you get it, it makes sense. Know this, until you've done it and tried it for a while, you don't know what you don't know. And so you're going to delegate it, but be prepared that there's going to be some challenges and things to figure out along the way,
Right.
and new things that you didn't consider. So if you have the opportunity to try it out yourself first, it's always a good idea. In general, I always recommend
What would
before you
be what would be an
crystallize.
example of that? What would be an example of something that you know a shliach wants to do, but you're saying don't hand it off before you do it yourself first.
It could really be anything. It could really be anything. It depends how conceptual it is and how practical it is. I'll give you an example personally, right? There was I never really did any big marketing for any of my organization, not for Chabad, not for Chabad Concierge. At one point, I'm like, we have the staff, we have the team, we have the infrastructure. Why don't we do a little marketing? So we got a graphic design. We threw some ideas at on a paper of what we could start doing, and we came out with the idea of posting some social media memes every twice a week or something like that. And the graphic design actually did a good job, but after a short while, it was rubbing me the wrong way. I'm like, I can't. This is not us. This doesn't represent us, right? This is misaligned. It's not who we are.
Saying
And I stopped it.
the graphics that he was posting, you're saying wasn't
It's more than the graphics. It's the medium. It's the fact that we're posting on social media twice a week. It's the graphics. It's the language that was being used. It was too superficial. It was too gimmicky, and
hmm,
I just didn't feel like it represents who we are and what we do. So I put a stop to it. So just sometimes, again, you need to do these
right,
things. But they are
right.
research and development projects. Until they are operational for a certain amount of time, you've gotten the feedback, you've adjusted, and you're happy with the results. It's a research and development project.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
you could delegate an R&D, but it's a different experience. Once it's concrete, you're like, okay, we've been doing this for 3 months, it works. Boom, it's so easy to hand off. Like just
Interesting. So
just
you're saying
yeah.
no, not mixing up between what stages is this something that research and development, or is this something that's it's a finished product and now I'm handing it off? Is
Absolutely,
that
absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
Right.
I've
Interesting.
also come across this a lot where I'm speaking to someone who wants to automate something, right? I want to automate this whole thing, and it's all conceptual. And I always recommend don't automate anything until you've done it and
Hmm.
you've practiced it enough.
You know the ins and outs of it.
Yeah, because you spend so much time and or money
Right.
or energy creating the automation, and then you realize you actually have to redo half of it,
Hmm.
and it's a waste of resources. You always have to run it, operate it. So, and whenever I'm doing something in the R&D stage, meaning or exploration stage, I always try to use minimal infrastructure and try to do it as superficially established as possible. Meaning, even if it's going to take human hours, even if I'm going to have someone copy pasting from one place to the other, which seems so silly, I'll do that rather than put
Build an
ability
infrastructure.
investment.
Right.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
Right.
Um, and as growing organizations, this happens a lot, and we have to allow ourselves the ability to adapt. And if we crystallize things too early, it limits our ability to adapt.
Interesting. So let me ask you to give a practical example, right? Like, a shliach that's wanting to delegate, you know, CRM management, right?
Mhm.
Putting in info and setting up right. Um, what is the common pitfall? Is it that the shliach himself isn't doing it or doesn't have that system down pat by himself, so therefore he has a challenge handing that over? Is that would that be the
So it's a good example to talk about because I have a lot of experience there. Most often than not, the reason that there's friction there is besides the technical aspect of the CRM, which is a common point of friction across all industries. Salespeople, people are on the ground and interacting with the customers, or in our case, fundraisers with donors, don't want to use platforms. They don't want to use systems. It's two different hats. You're going from intense, high stake relationships to menial typing and
right,
apps and stuff like that.
right?
It's such a kafakela that
Hmm.
it's
Interesting.
very hard to do. So that's the first thing. It's a hard thing to do. Um, which inspired the Chabad Street Mobile, our new app, which I showed you, which kind of like removes a lot of the CRM to try to facilitate it. Where you have the link to call, you come back, it's like already
Hmm.
recorded, very easy to do. But it's not the end all be all. It's not enough to just automate the process because there's often a deeper layer, and that is that the person's not fundraising. So before, meaning the idea, the concept that comes to my attention often is, okay, I just need someone to set up the system. Once I have the system in place, or I have the VA, then I'm going to fundraise. And that's
Hmm.
often not true. That's often not true. You're not fundraising for other reasons,
Hmm.
and you're hoping that this point of friction, which is a real point of friction, will solve it. It's not going to solve it. Take a pen and paper, start with 10, 15 people, and if your plan is to call 5 people per week, do that for 3 weeks. Do that, and then make a new list of 15 people, and for three more weeks, call 5 people. Start small, 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 small. If you can sustain the behavior, then automate it. If you're not sustaining the behavior, it has nothing to do with
Hmm.
platform.
Right.
And oftentimes sustaining the behavior is difficult. And again, I have a lot of compassion because fundraising is such a challenge from a, and I'm not saying it's a challenge because it's not a challenge in terms of a role to play or a responsibility to carry. It's a challenge to carry fundraising responsibility along with everything else.
Right.
It really needs energy. It really needs attention, and it really needs your bandwidth. And when you're stretched thin across so many things, it's so hard to pivot from everything else to now being in wearing that hat of the fundraiser. So I have a lot of
Right.
compassion for it, but the behavior is the hardest thing to create, and the system, the CRM, things like that aren't going to solve it. Once you have the behavior and you have it in place for a while, the CRM is going to amplify you big time. It's
So
really
you're
going to
saying
help.
once you're actually doing that, meaning if you're just, if I understand correctly, if you're using the lack of CRM or that as the excuse, like it's not going to fix it, right? It's something that you have to be doing, fundraising. If you are doing it, but now, like you explained before, there's a gap between, or like a shift between like the relationship human to human, person to person element to like putting in information and keeping track and all that stuff. Like, how does one bridge that gap? Because if I understood it correctly, you're saying if you're not doing that yourself, like it won't work to just hand it off to someone else. So how does one successfully um, or is it just something that you have to be able to learn how to do to be able to carry both, the
You,
both sides of it?
sorry, just so I'm clear. So you're saying, how do we hand off the administrative part of fundraising?
Yeah, no, yes, yes. Meaning, are you saying that besides for doing the fundraising, the shliach himself has to know how to, let's say, use a CRM or use it himself first, and then he could successfully delegate it, or is
Okay,
that
so again, assuming the fundraiser developed the behavior and he's able to sustain the behavior, and at the beginning we're talking about a list of 15 people, so you could intuit that list. You don't need any great data to
right?
come up with a list of 15 people you should reach out to, right? So you got that list of 15, you sustain the behavior, like, okay, now I'm going to use a CRM to expand that list from 15 to 100 people. And now you really need a system because you're not going to remember.
Right,
So you need a CRM, which is the tool. Then you need the processing that you're going to use a CRM to automate or to facilitate. And that means you have to know how many people are you contacting, what's your criteria, how often are you contacting them. And once you have that in place, you could start putting that into the CRM, creating the reports and the workflows to automate that. And you have to know how to do that, or you have to hire a consultant to do it for you. But once you have that in place, run it for a little bit yourself for a few weeks.
right,
You're going to make some
right.
tweaks, and then it's very easy to hand off to a virtual assistant.
Hmm. Now, is that a common pitfall where people try handing it off before they've mastered it themselves?
Yes, but I think it's more creating a distraction and excuses. I'm sorry to be a little insensitive, but um, it's more like you're putting energy in the wrong place and trying to solve the problem when the problem is just you have to figure out a workflow to start making the calls, which precedes so much the CRM. And if I could share
Right.
comments on what I think,
Yeah.
the
Sure.
first thing is you have to understand your pitch. What are you pitching to people? What's your approach? Having numbers and names, even people is it's not enough. You have to know, how are you connecting to them? What's your strategy? You can't just call people and say hi. Like, you have to have a strategy going in. You develop your strategy. It has to be comfortable. It has to be something that feels good, that is inspiring to you, and you can inspire the other. Meaning, don't borrow the strategy of your chavrusa, in the next city over. It might not work
Right.
for you. So you have to have a strategy of how you're building these relationships. How are you keeping them warm? How are you asking for money? What's your pitch? What's your direction? Um, and then you have to have a criteria. How are you picking your names and make the calls? If I was in that situation, that I had to fundraise, I would struggle heavily with it. I would probably force myself to wake up every morning at 4:30 in the morning and prepare my fundraising task for the day, even if it's calling 2 people, 3 people, because once the day starts, you have no more control. You're completely swept off by all the other responsibilities. But I would start before anybody wakes up, before anybody knows is calling me, texting me. I'm getting up, and for half an hour, I'm just deciding who I'm calling that day, because I might not know the criteria, I might not know how the system, but I'll take the half an hour and I'll just decide on 2 people. I'll do that
Hmm.
for 2-3 weeks, and slowly but surely build the momentum that way. A little bit of a tangent, but
Yeah. No.
I
No.
I
Beautiful.
wanted to share.
Yeah. Beautiful. So shliach that has that part going right. They're doing the fundraising. They have a system, right? Now they want to, like you said, track it and track the information and have that going well. Is that something they need to figure out before handing it off to that
Yeah,
part to okay.
absolutely, absolutely. Meaning, they might get lucky, again, you could find someone that happens to know and might be able to
Right.
do something that somehow works, but it's the responsible thing to do, is to
Figure that part out.
figure it out yourself. Yeah,
And
figure it out yourself.
and what would a shliach that wants to learn that process of proper tracking and CRM use, like what would your advice be to learn that process?
So in terms of developing the behavior, I would call Coach Tzviki
Mhm.
uh, to coach me through it and help me get into that zone. Once I'm in that zone, um, there's many providers, right? I mean, obviously, I'm biased with Chabad Suite. You could reach out to
Is
Chabad
that
Suite,
part
set up
of
a.
what Chabad Suite does? Is helping? like
So
consulting in that sense? Like,
Chabad Suite is a platform, but we have our team is available to our customers for a fee to help them set up whatever. So
right,
if you want to set up a fundraising workflow, just submit a ticket and get on a call with someone from our tech team, and they'll help translate what you want to do to actual workflow.
right,
But the truth is, the CS Mobile kind of takes care of most fundraising needs with the pre-existing reports, and that's like definitely the place to start.
right,
And then once you get really refined, if somebody has a really refined process that this is how they do it, then they might need to contact support
right.
to get some
Okay, cool,
assistance. Yeah.
cool. So is there any other elements to the, like, as the ingredients? So knowing the thing, like understanding well the thing that you want to delegate, right? Like being it's something that you've done and you've have a certain sense of mastery and like what this is. Now you want to hand it over. Is there any other ingredients to successful delegation?
On the level of delegating a task, I think that's a place to start, right?
That's
I mean,
the okay,
there's obviously you have to have some kind of accountability, some way to maintain the relationship, because you're working with a human, and if
right, interesting,
if you just leave it open ended, it doesn't age well.
right, right. It's like treating the assistant as a human being,
Yeah, yeah. To the degree
right,
needed for that relationship. Every
right,
relationship has different needs, and on the assistant relationship, there's needs as well, and got to sustain it.
right. Beautiful. I want to pivot a little bit to further along in the journey, right? Where shliach, um, I don't know in your arc that you mentioned earlier where this will fall in, but shliach, let's be past this stage of just delegating tasks, but wants to hire even let's say another shliach, right? Someone that's going to take that ownership role where they're taking a certain piece of the moisad and leading it, and or not a shliach or operational or programming director is someone that's taking more ownership. Like, what are the common pitfalls and the challenges? We know we know that it's like it's not a simple task. There are times that it doesn't go well. What are the like what are the ingredients that makes that process successful? Of where shliach could bring someone else in, and that person could thrive and really take ownership and succeed in their role.
Okay, this is a topic I very, very much enjoy, and I'm very passionate about at this point in time, at least. Um, so going from being an operator to an institutional leader, meaning that you're transitioning from being the one who directs everything, being the center of gravity for your organization, to developing other people to take
Hmm,
leadership positions. There are many factors that come into play over there that are not obvious, that if not taken into account, create a very shaky experience.
hmm,
So I'll start with the leader himself, right? So if you're hiring on that level, you're hiring another leader. The understanding is that this other leader, either now or in the future, wants to carry ownership. That's what he's designed for, or that's his ambition at least. And you have to be ready to share that. Meaning you have to be so connected, because you have to understand at every point in every stage in growth, you need to feel safe and secure. There's something that provides you with a sense of safety and security. As an operator, being the one that gets feedback and interacting with the community, and it's inspiring. It's keeping you excited, invigorated, and that provides a sense of security. It provides a sense of validation. Now, hiring an owner means that you're willing to remove yourself from that. It
hmm,
means that you connected so much to your vision, so much to your mission, that it's more important to you that the mission and vision expand beyond you than it is that it provides you with a uh, sense of reward that you get from being the one acting and doing.
hmm.
So that's the first step. That's a shift in identity, right? That's the first step, is a shift in identity. You're graduating. You've experienced being the guy who's running everything, and now you're ready to uh, inspire somebody else and develop somebody else or others to expand the impact that you have. So that's significant. That's not small.
Right. Right. Before we go on, I would love to sit on this for a minute. Like, there's like an identity shift, right? Of me being the person that's, the example that comes to mind, maybe discussed this once on the podcast about this concept shluchim that had, that was at a project years ago where there's a grant shluchim to hire other shluchim to teach. So let's say I'm just using this example, right? You were the guy that's doing all the shooting, and now you're bringing someone else, and they're the new interface. They're the person that's doing the shooting, right? So there's an identity shift of like me being the person and the only source of inspiration, and now I'm giving that to somebody else. So there's certain bittul over here. I need to let go of that person that I was. That was just the person on the ground to a different position to make room for someone else. So what could you say more about what is that identity besides from letting go of being that person that was the only interface, the only relationship person, the only person on the ground, to giving that over to someone else. So that's like the letting go of. But what is like the stepping into? What am I stepping into when I'm giving that part away?
Very good question. And it's important because I don't think bittul is the right approach. I mean, there's an element of bittul, but if your approach in hiring somebody else means that you're chopping off part of yourself and giving it to someone else, you lost out. You missed the opportunity because rather than amplifying yourself, you're shrinking yourself and just somebody else taking over. And if I don't know what the strategy is, but eventually you minimize yourself and others take on the responsibility, but it's not amplifying, it's not multiplying the impact and the vision that you have or you want to have.
Right. And also I'm assuming like a moisad needs a successful leader. So if you're just shrinking yourself, it doesn't lend to being a stronger leader, right?
Also, another piece that it doesn't age well. It doesn't age well.
Right.
It creates conflict and a lot of friction. So, what's the path of going there, right? If a person is insecure about bringing someone else to replace some activity on the leadership level, or if it feels uncomfortable, first of all, we have to acknowledge that it's a human thing. We're all human, and yeah, we like the spotlight. It's a normal thing. The way to transition out of that is to connect more deeply to your vision, to your values, and to start really seeing it. Like, what are you building? Where are you going? Where's the moisad going to be in 10 years? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The same way that the pioneer needs to connect to the future self of what it's going to be like when he's going to be able to delegate the CRM so he could only be making calls. And that's going to sustain him through the period of like stepping back to train the new person. Right. The leader who's in the operational state and wanting to hand off a leadership responsibility, he has to be so connected to that vision and to that future mission, and he has to have that confidence that he knows he's able he's secure and he's confident and he knows he's going to be able to bring it about. That will allow him to sustain the intermittent lack of feedback he gets from the community by handing off the role.
Right. Wow, I think it's a powerful point. Like the void of that you're filling in with what you're letting go is stepping in and really living with that bigger picture of where you're going. That's what I'm understanding.
Absolutely. But the rules, it's not that you're leaving and you're separate. The leader really has to see himself as the one who's going to nurture and steward the growth of the leaders that he's hiring and the growth of the organization. He's still there. A CEO is very removed from the day-to-day activity, but he's the one driving everything. He's carrying the most important responsibilities. So I guess learning how to be a CEO, and that starts with connecting to the vision, to the mission, to the values that inform how things are done, and then transforming himself to that identity, and then allowing him to also steward others to become leaders as well.
Wow. Yes, actually, I'm hearing a new piece, which is besides for like you're saying connecting with a vision, also like the identity transition of being the guy on the ground to being the guy that's empowering everybody. That's a shift in identity, right? I'm not the guy that's the interface and the example he used before is doing the shluchim all the time, right? Or that's doing the programs or whatever. But I'm the guy that's going to be the life force for all the people that are. That's a identity shift.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow, powerful.
There's another component, right? So
Yeah.
that's on the leader himself. That's his journey in making that shift. But then there's also the person you're hiring and what you're delegating, right? Again, we go back to those other three components. The person you're hiring, you have to be able to assess his capacity. Not somebody who's 24 just came out of Kale isn't ready to take on full ownership. He needs to be nurtured. He's a junior, right? He doesn't have the experience you have. You coming in with 20 years of blood, sweat, and tears and overcoming challenges, and you're hiring someone. There's a lot of experience that you have he doesn't have. So you have to be able to understand what his arc of growth is going to be and how you're going to facilitate his growth. And probably starting somebody who's junior at a leadership position is it's going to be challenging. It's going to be challenging. He's going to need much more direction, much more oversight, um, and so you have to be prepared for that. If it's maybe weekly meetings, and you also have to have the technical skills and also the soft skills to develop this person and know what he's truly capable of in terms of potential, and nurture that growth.
Hmm. So tell me if I'm hearing correctly. You're saying like adjusting expectations of if I'm hiring somebody in a real leadership role, I'm not expecting them to be everything I was yesterday when I've been doing it for 20 years, and they're just stepping in it for the first time. Like having a realistic expectation and also system that supports them in that growth.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's what's needed. That's what's absolutely needed. Designing the role for him today, who he is today, and also having an idea of how this grows, how does this evolve, and then knowing okay, this is where he's at. Sometimes not everybody could become an elite fundraiser or the guy running the whole thing. Everybody has their own capacity, and you as the CEO have to be able to identify that and to nurture that
Right.
and to know when to stop.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Wow. And something else you mentioned, which is like clarifying the role. Do you think that is part of sometimes the problem when there isn't clear, um, defined, roles and responsibilities or
100%. Again, if you don't have the role design, you're inviting someone to help you work out how to design a role. That's what he's doing. But the thing is, in this case, compared to the virtual assistant, this person's moving with their family to your town, and it's much more high stake. So
right.
just like I said before, hire a consultant, hire a consultant, hire a consultant. What I've heard done, I don't know, is that the shliach and the hiree like sort of work the job description together. I don't see how that works. I just don't see how that works. Logically, it doesn't make sense. The leader has to be very clear what he wants. He has to be very clear where he's going. He has to create the job description, and he has to be confident that what's there is truly what he needs, and he's looking for the person that's going to fit this role. You have to create alignment, and if you don't, it's just creating a huge vacuum, and you're inviting the person to discover this together. And what's going to come out is, God forbid, he's there for a year. You learn how to create a job description better next time. He learns how
Right.
to
Right.
how,
Learned the
how
hard
to look
way.
at job descriptions. Yeah, and it's unpleasant
Right.
experience for everyone. Absolutely.
Right. Interesting. So I appreciate what you're saying about like the shliach, the leader knowing what he needs and what he wants and defining that role first. But I also see the value in like, okay, but you're bringing, and this maybe goes back to what you were saying before. Like, I'm bringing this person in, right? I need to hear from them. Where are they at? What are they capable of? Like, what am I expecting of them, and where they actually what are they able what are they actually able to deliver at this point in time, or over what's their potential? Like, not having unrealistic. I guess this goes back to what I said before. Like, yes, I could define, or I need to define that role, but I also need to have a really good sense of where this person is at. What they're capable of. What would the realistic expectation of time for them to grow into whatever I'm want or whatever.
It sounds like you're talking about the interview process.
The I guess the hiring process, yeah.
Correct. So, I mean, so once you have a job description and you know what you're looking for, you put it out there in the job market ether, shluchim, apply. You have your first scan of the profiles, do some research, and obviously you have to meet the person. And different ways to go about it, and everybody has to do it in the way that's comfortable for them. But obviously, before you hire this person, you have to definitely assess: does this person align with this role, and to what degree? You're never going to get 100% fit, but you want to know what you're going into before you go into it. And you have to be also able to interview. It's a skill. You have to be able to know how much of what he's saying is really where he's at and how much of it is aspirational, because people are very eager and they want to please and they want to do, and they're able to, they'll say, yeah, of course I could do this, of course I did this, like, yeah, I've done hard things before. But it might be that the role you're designing is, you want somebody who's comfortable in this role and doing it with ease. And it might be that the person interviewing says, I could do it because I could stretch myself and do things that are uncomfortable. But that's not going to age well because he's not comfortable in this role. He's just him going out of his kalim to perform something that is not aligned with him. So it's a skill. You have to be able to understand and know how to read people's
Right,
communication and to align it with the job description.
right. Um, I'm curious because I'm going beyond. Let's say, you know, shliach hire another shliach, right? So beyond the process of hiring and finding, um, and this is something actually I've heard from people in the past, where like a shliach, he's investing a lot of money, right, to hire another shliach, right?
Yeah.
And then because of that, they have like a very, that shliach might have a very high expectation or unrealistic expectation, of what they want to see that new, that new shliach produce or provide, right? So, what would you say to that? Like, what would make for, not in the actual hiring process, but in the, I don't know what you call, like,
Job
you know,
description design.
no, but I'm saying in the, once they're there and they're actually doing it. Yeah, I guess this goes to the job description, or I'm thinking of like the level of slack that the the shliach on top gives, or space for that person to 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 grow into their position, or maybe the having expectations that match where that person's at.
Right. So the job description has to be realistic. You could design
Right.
whatever you want. You could design a job description. You want the person to work, 90-hour weeks and do absolutely every responsibility that you don't want to do and schlep and, allow me to do all the fun things. You could, and good luck finding the person who's going to take that job, regardless what you pay. Right. Um, and granted, I understand the employer's uh, uh, perspective that this is a lot of money. This is a big investment for me, and there's a big risk, and I need the person to meet me there. Okay, but maybe you're not going to find anyone who wants to meet you there, and it's likely not, because the dynamics around hiring and looking for jobs have changed. Maybe once upon a time, money really went a long way, and offering a salary was like a big deal, and people were willing to do whatever it took. There's a lot more opportunities today. There's a lot more ways to make money. We're not limited. We don't have to live in Crown Heights anymore, and have there's 8 jobs to fight over. There's a lot of opportunity out there. So you're fighting with a greater job market, and I would suggest, rather than create a job description that's very difficult to fill, that you're looking for someone to adopt with Mesiras Nefesh, which means that there's a strong likelihood he's going to burn out. He's not going to sustain. Um, Take the time to develop your infrastructure to a place where you could hire someone at a comfortable with a comfortable job description. I'm not saying to pay through the roof, but that the job description should match the salary compared to the market, to compare to this person with a skill set. What he would be able to get if you went to another job, and start there, and also have some money allowing yourself to hire the wrong person. Let's try
Hmm.
for a year, see if it doesn't work.
Right.
Move him back to his
Right.
location. Let's try second time. You have to be there before hiring, or else you're you're gambling. It's too much of a gamble. It's a very high stake, and you're putting yourself in a position that makes it very difficult to succeed in a harmonious way.
If what? If what?
If you create a very intense
Unrealistic. Right.
unrealistic job description that requires
Right.
Mesiras Nefesh to. I
Right.
saw a beautiful sicha last week where um, I'll mention Israel Swarnim shared it with me. Where the Rebbe is addressing a situation where someone took upon themselves the mitzvah of getting people to buy a letter in the Sefer Torah. And this individual was doing far more than his fair share without any compensation. And the Rebbe was encouraging the Hasidim to come up with a salary for this person. At least he should have a full-time salary and could be fully focused on this one thing of helping people get a letter in the Sefer Torah.
Hmm.
And the Rebbe said, Mesiras Nefesh helps when you're jumping off the roof onto the ground. But if you're trying to go from the ground to the roof, Mesiras Nefesh won't help you.
Huh.
And if I could extrapolate, you need a staircase. You need infrastructure. And the staircase has to be even steps.
Right.
And
So you're saying you want that your shliach you're hiring comes in with attitude of Mesiras Nefesh. I'm gonna go above and beyond, and you still can't like they can have Mesiras Nefesh, but they can't jump from the ground to the roof. You need it, like you're saying, you
exactly.
need to build it. Right. Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Um,
But I'm saying further than that also, Tzviki. What I'm saying is that being a shliach employee can be a very appealing job. It could be a very appealing job. We're in a different era. This is not, the pioneer era of Chabad in the United States where we're shunned and nobody is interested in Chabad. People expect Chabad. And I'm not saying for everyone. Obviously, everybody has different circumstances. But there's a significant amount of Chabad houses that are in a situation that would allow them to build infrastructure, that would allow them to create very attractive positions for shluchim. And there's no reason we shouldn't be doing that.
hmm. Wow. So yeah, that leads me to the next question, which is, what do you see, for the future of Chabad houses and moisad? What's the word I'm looking for? What's your hopeful vision of what is possible for shluchim Chabad houses that are at that stage to build proper good infrastructure to be hiring positions that last and grow and thrive? Yeah,
So
the word I was
I
looking for is
want,
optimistic. What's your optimistic
right.
view?
So I'll say I'm very optimistic, and I'll tell you why, because I see a shift. I see a significant shift. I speak to hundreds of shluchim, and there's a significant shift that took place where before the idea of infrastructure was very much an afterthought. Like I have to have a QuickBooks, whatever. Like where there's a shift where now shluchim are taking the idea of building an organization seriously. It's not just about a facade that I need to create for the appearance of being an organization, but they're starting to really take the idea of building an organization as a responsibility. I am now an organization owner. I'm a shliach, and my part of my shluchas is developing and growing an organization in a healthy and strategic and proper way. So the shift is already happening where people are taking it seriously, and I'm also seeing more people emerge to support that kind of transition for shluchim and that kind of development. I speak a lot with Mendel Shem Tov, who does some work there as well. Myself and just
I was about to
the
make a
coaching industry also.
I was about to make a plug for you. Anybody that's looking for support in this, speak to Yosef.
So also to mention, there's the mediators, for Americas that emerged, I think, in 2015, something like that. It was the transition's already happening. We're already going that direction, and I think once once that maturity takes place where shluchim are understand and excel at creating organizations, couple that with the Mesiras Nefesh and the passion and the light and the emes that we bring to the table, nothing's going to stop us.
Hmm.
It's going to grow exponentially. So I'm very excited to see the future and where it
It is
heads.
to tell you became the tikkun. Saying having
Yes. Nice. Perfectly said.
wow, wow, beautiful slave. Thank you for sharing all that wisdom and hands-on experience. And any closing remarks, um, or what would your message be to a shliach earlier on the earlier stages that wants to set himself up properly, in those early stages, any closing thoughts?
So to the shliach in the early stages, I think the message I would want to share is be very wary and very careful and very conservative on how you use facades. And
Hmm.
I'll explain. There's a tendency to want to appear more successful than you are. And for some reason, the human experience, like if I appear successful, I will get the results of a successful organization, of a successful shliach. And really that does anything but create success. In fact, it steers you completely in the wrong direction. And the more you can connect to the stage you're at, meaning if you're a pioneer, be a pioneer and speak to people on the level of pioneer. You don't have to go around saying you're a pioneer. It's kind of weird, but I'm just saying, somebody says, oh, welcome to town. What are you doing? Speak like a pioneer. Say, I'm here as an emissary of Chabad to explore the community and to get to know the people in the community and to understand what the community needs, because we are going to, God willing, be building an organization that's going to support Jewish development and thriving Jewish identity in the community. Allow yourself to be in the exploratory
Right.
phase. Invite people to be with you in that stage, and
Hmm.
it is going to be a much easier progression if you don't have to sustain a facade that you created in order to interact with people. If you could just genuinely be yourself and be where you are, people will connect to it, and it'll be just a much easier experience for you.
Wow. Wow. Very interesting concept. I think is very valid. And I think I heard you say, if I understood correctly, like there's two sides to it. Is like being able to be honest with what stage you're at, right, and communicate that, but also like having a clear and inspiring vision of like, yes, we're here to build something, big, and to build a home for Jewish life, or whatever. Um, you know, even if we're like, I'm starting at this whatever stage I'm at, right? I don't need to pretend like I have something going on bigger than what I do, but this is where we're going. Like having that clarity and even being able to speak that way of like, um, we're going somewhere big.
Yeah, and being transparent about the fact you don't know how to get there. It's very inspiring.
Right.
I can tell you
Right.
from my experience when I hire people and I interview. Recently, I filled a position, a leadership position. I was interviewing a lot of people, and everyone's just eager to show you how they're capable of being a leader. And then you dig through and you see there's nothing really there. It's just eagerness. It's just wanting to perceive themselves
Right.
as there. And then there's that one person who might say, I don't have any experience in being in a leadership team. I've always been operational, but boy, I would really like to. I would be very interested in discovering what it's like and
Huh.
happy to learn
I'm
along the
ready to
way. And
learn.
listen,
Right.
I'm ready to learn. That I'd rather hire that person than, you know,
Wow.
um, and the same thing, so if
Right.
somebody's coming to fundraise from you and talking about everything he has, but hasn't even bothered, connecting to you on a personal level, it's very hard to get excited about supporting that person. But if the person is able to share their journey and be transparent, and oh my God, like how starved are we from
Honest.
authentic
Right.
relationships, right? This is inspiring. It's exciting, and somebody who's achieved something in their life, who's successful, who has the capacity to give significantly, has definitely gone through that stage of not knowing,
Right.
of being the guy who doesn't know.
There's no shame in that. There's no nothing.
Yeah.
There's
Not only is
nothing.
there no shame,
Right.
he'll see himself as like, wow, like
Right.
he's there. Like I was there once, it's
Wow.
it's inspiring. That's my thought for the pioneers
Wow.
out there.
Wow. You really pulled out a big one. Powerful message.
Thanks,
Um,
Vicky.
Thank you, Yosef. This has been really fun and valuable, and I hope many shluchim are able to take many lessons from it, and they should give you much hatzlacha in your holy work.
Amen, amen. And thank you for this ongoing podcast. I really enjoy the episodes, and you bring a lot of good awareness to shluchim. Thank you.
Thank you, Yosef. Hatzlacha.
Sacha.